Welcome to Nitpicking Nerds. Do not skip this intro and the disclaimers coming after it.
We've got 20 more unplayable cards, according to the stipulations we're about to provide.
I'm your host, Joe Cherries.
I'm your host, Beezy, and that makes us the Nitpicking Nerds. They're doing this again. They must be crazy. Yeah, we're crazy. Crazy for you to hit the link in the description that takes you to the TCG Player affiliate link where you can buy Magic cards that you were going to buy anyway because Magic cards are amazing. So instead of just buying them, go to the link first, then navigate as you normally would to checkout, and boom, we get a kickback on the order courtesy of you without you paying any extra money.
Yes. Also, we have a Kickstarter currently running. Help us meet our stretch goals. Please use the link in the description. We'd appreciate that very much.
Commander gameplay.
Commander gameplay, exactly. So, let's hop into this video. We're talking about cards that we consider unplayable under the following criteria. First, we'll start with they're unplayable in the high-powered EDH, not CEDH. We're not talking about decks that are powered to the max and made to play against each other and winning combo on turn 4.
Another way to view this is if you're looking to upgrade your deck's power level, we recommend always cutting these as a general rule. We're like, for example, me and Joe, for us, these literally, we're never playing them. Literally, they're unplayable for us. But we're saying, if you want to power up your deck, here's the cards we think are unplayable. So if you have them, I definitely recommend cutting them.
Yes. But just one more way of saying that is if we were ranking a deck to be powerful and not taking a ton of, and like not powering it down, we would cut these cards first if they were in the list.
Right. Pretty much every tune-up that involves these cards, we end up cutting them. So let's get some more things out of the way. This isn't budget. It's not taken into consideration. When you're powering up your deck, generally, you have a pretty lax budget, or you're just looking at what cards make the deck the best. And we're not talking about CDH. You can be powerful and not play CDH, which is going to be, I'm sure, a contention point for one of these cards. But please remember what we said just now.
It'll be very obvious because we're going to talk about cards that are very CDH playable and not playable anywhere else in our humble opinions. Also, if we make fun of a card jokingly or if we say a card is unplayable, we're not attacking anyone who plays it. We're not saying you're a bad player for playing it. We're not saying anything along those lines. We're simply saying we feel the card is not good in the format of Commander.
We're separating the card from the cardist, if you will.
The cardist.
All right, now that we've got that all out of the way, I feel pretty comfortable saying that was airtight. I don't think it's going to get any better than that in terms of clarification. You know, we made this video before. It got some flack. We got some hate. We got some feedback, mostly negative, some positive. And I think we're improving on that. We could have delivered the information a little bit better. So we're going to work on that for this video. And we got 2019 new cards.
Yes, so we're starting with the first one. It's going to be a repeat. It's Grave Titan. It's a card we've talked about. It's become a meme on the channel, and it's worth talking about again. The reason we believe this card to be unplayable when powering up your deck and for high-powered decks is it doesn't do enough. And the things it does can be done by cards at lower mana costs. So the reason you play is usually for the bodies. It does make a good amount of power for 6 mana, but that's not super relevant overall.
Yeah, so this is a 6 mana card, and already when I'm looking at my decks, I usually play like 4 or less 6-drops in basically every deck. Maybe a few 7-drops, but exactly 6. I'm playing like 4 or 3. They need to supercharge my deck or create this huge advantage or wipe the board or something. And power toughness with almost 0 other frills on it is never going to advance your game state enough to be worth the 6 mana and the like no instantaneous effect on the board.
So the next thing is we fall into, okay, so we don't think it's enough power toughness, and we don't think just power toughness is enough overall. So then it goes to the combo thing. People love bringing up the fact that this card combos off. There are just cards that do this better. So let's just start at lower mana cost. We have Weapon Craft Enthusiast, which is a 3-mana one to make 3 bodies. There's, what's the...
Sengir Autocrat makes 4 bodies.
Sengir Autocrat also, like BZ said, makes 4 bodies. And at 6 mana, you can get the payoff stapled onto it in the form of Marionette Master.
Oh, yep, it's true. It's the bodies that enter, and then it's big, and then once you sacrifice the little servos, that's your infinite. You win.
So the combo that people talk about for Grave Titan that mainly exists, if you're not sure what we're talking about here, is that it combos with Ashnod's Altar and Nim Deathmantle. Now, all the cards that we just listed also go off with it. Now, and you add in the fact that on top of that, the Marionette Master, which is the same amount of mana, now pays it off and kills every player, and you just see why we're not touching Grave Titan.
Right. Weaponcraft Enthusiast also, you'll net infinite 1/1s if you don't have a payoff. So there's infinite board state. And then Sengir Autocrat can give you infinite 0/1s, I think, if you stack the triggers right. Obviously, that's not like you can't attack with infinite 0/1s, but you didn't win that turn because something went wrong. You don't have the other payoff, so it's infinite creatures still.
Exactly. So Grave Titan, not a card we're touching ever. Next, we're moving on to a little subcategory. It's these 3-mana instant speed removal spells that just don't quite hit enough. We want our 3-mana instant speed removal to hit everything. We want Generous Gift. We want Beast Within. We want Anguished Unmaking. Yep. Those are the cards we want.
Chaos Warp, another one.
Chaos Warp. All those ones are very good, and we're going to put them in lots of decks.
Yeah, the problem is with a 3-mana, you're already kind of paying a premium. You're like, 3 mana, what am I getting? And usually with those, it's the ability to answer literally anything. You don't have to think about it. If it's in play, you can answer it. And to ask any more of that other than starting to get 2-for-1s, I'm not interested in it. So if it just says kill a thing, it better say everything if it costs 3. And Putrefy, Mortify, and Bedevil certainly do not. They all restrict you to only 2 things. And I think we talked in the last Unplayable Cards episode about just Hero's Downfall is just absolute. It's not good. It's really just nowhere near where you want to be. I mean, these cards are going up against some of the most efficient spells: Swords to Plowshares, Nature's Claim, Deadly Rollick, Snuff Out. They cost 1 and 0. That's where you want to get your efficiency. But when you want versatility, don't stop at two targets.
I think overall it's safe to say a generalization I've come to is you don't want to be going 1-for-1, just 1-for-1 at 2 mana. That goes for your Terminates, your Dreadbores, all these kind of cards. Now, is Terminate completely unplayable? No, I wouldn't put that in this video overall. But as a general rule of thumb, if it is a 1-for-1, I'm not looking for 2 mana. You need something more. That's why I don't like Counterspell very much. But how can I get more of that? Oh, Mana Drain. Or I can play Arcane Denial, which will replace my card. These type of things, they change the 1-for-1 dynamic from being just a straight up 1-for-1. I don't want to be going 1-for-1 at that mana. 1 mana, I'll go 1-for-1 all day. Or I'll go up to 3 mana for 1-for-1 if I can hit anything.
Right, and then there's X spells that are 2-for-1s and all this other stuff. It's just the competition is crazy for removal. These are just never going to cut it. Next is a board wipe that we think also never really cuts it. It's Merciless Eviction, and it gives you a lot of choices. You go creature, artifact, enchantment, planeswalker. But it's like less good than it looks with the choices you get. First of all, planeswalker is basically flavor text. That's not really ever happening.
Well, so is enchantment. I mean, enchantment is so rarely ever the prominent creature type or problem at the table, and you're not going to get enough value for 6 mana. If you wipe 3 away, that's probably not enough to be worth casting this for 6 mana.
Right. Artifacts is okay. There's definitely boards where that's good. It's similar to Vandal Blast, except you lose all yours. You're presumably not in green with this. You lose all yours, and then you kind of are in white anyway, so you have stuff like Heliod's Intervention and all these other amazing white destruction spells. And then creatures, that's the main mode, and it's 6 mana exile creatures. That's not where you want to be. That's below rate. When we can go for things like Tragic Arrogance or even just Toxic Deluge, we're in those colors.
Yeah,
those are in way before this.
Yeah, exactly. We're not taking, like we said, budget is not being taken into consideration. I understand this card is fairly cheap, but you just can't. This is too much mana overall. Like you said, enchantments, it's better for having enchantments on. It's better for having planeswalkers, but those aren't relevant enough to make it worth playing. So basically you have the modes of exile all artifacts usually, or exile all creatures, and 6 mana exile all creatures is just not a good enough spell overall. Yeah,
choices are always great, but just because it has choices doesn't mean it's automatically like this playable Swiss Army knife. This one falls a little bit short. I mean, compared to Austere Command, that's what we want, where you can destroy creatures guaranteed, and then add on whatever else is bugging you.
Yeah, I think Austere Command just adds a whole extra. It's so much better, and that's where you want to be for a 6 mana board wipe. The versatility of that spell versus the versatility of this spell is insane.
Next on our unplayable list, we got what I'm going to call these Desperation 1 mana interaction, where the format, this is CEDH cards, the format is so aggressive and you have so much pressure to interact that these 1 mana poopy like interaction spells become premium because the game's not going to go long enough where on turn 7 you need 12 cards in your hand. So we got Pyroblast, Red Elemental Blast, Flusterstorm, Miscast, Spell Pierce, Dispel, Mental Misstep, and Chain of Vapor. They're all just kind of like meh. I think you could jam-pack your deck full of CDH interaction, and if the player around you doesn't change, you're actually screwed.
Yeah, these aren't going to cut the cake in decks, in metas. any meta that isn't CDH. These cards are great in CDH. And when the meta is really hyper-focused on interacting early, playing their spells early, and doing CDH level things, yeah, these cards are great. I think as soon as you step out of that, the second you go even down 1 power level to a 9, you don't touch these. You should not touch these. I don't want to have Red Elemental and Pyroblast. These narrow, and plus they're all the same. They're all these narrow answers, but because they're 1 mana, they're CDH playable. That's just not, you just don't need to be that efficient for overall that you need to take the cut in power.
Yeah, you can take a CDH deck and, fish out of water it into a regular pod. And if they can prevent you from doing whatever your first big play at winning the game is, you're screwed. You just can't keep up with value plays, synergy plays. CDH decks don't have a ton of synergy, if any.
Yeah.
It's just here's the best things. Let me try to leverage a win out of it. That's cool. But I just think in your 6s, 7s, and 8s, I'm just never touching these. It's just not worth it. Maybe the one possible exception is Chain of Vapor if you have some weird synergy where you want to cast it over and over
There's
again.
There's a potential. If it's a combo card, it can be decent. Chain of Vapor maybe Unplayable is a little harsh for it, but it's still pretty rough to play overall.
Right. I mean, and also there's the obvious quote of every card is playable somewhere. There's a corner case for everything. I'm not super interested in those. If we couldn't talk about outlier if we couldn't talk about cards, if there was an outlier deck somewhere, we wouldn't have a channel.
Okay, yeah.
Nobody would.
I mean, it's pretty simple. Flusterstorm is playable in a Veyron deck. I'm not playing it outside of that. It's great in Veyron because you can set up some really sweet storm off turn and then counter your own spell.
Over and over.
And over and over. Yeah, exactly. You cast 10 spells this turn. Now here's 10 extra triggers. Veyron's a one-shot. Yeah, there's situations like that with all cards. But we're just talking about in general and overall. Next one is a big, fighting point we seem to have in our comment section. Ghostly Prison Propaganda. Honestly, I just don't see these cards as powerful enough or good enough to make any list that's not purely for an attacks meta.
Yeah, for us, it's not even in the question. These don't get you your card back. They don't stop as much as you think they stop. Attacks matter less than these cards would have you believe. Even stopping 10, 15 damage, I don't know that that's super relevant, even if you were guaranteed to just play some weird spell that says gain 15 life. I think these cards are overplayed, maybe a little bit overhyped. I'm never touching them. There are some metas I could see it. I just think in any meta that I would describe as, a 5 or above, you just need to go to this.
Yeah, agreed. Another thing about this card is people are insistent that if you're not getting attacked, someone else getting attacked. That's not, it's just not necessarily true. Sometimes it's going to be true. Yeah, sometimes your Ghostly Prison's out, opponent has 2 points of attack, and they send it elsewhere. That's not always true, though. Maybe you're the only one they could have attacked. It's just overall, they're just not going to get there, and they're not going to be strong enough to be worth a slot.
Right. It's also a choice. The cards that give your opponents choices are famously worse than they could otherwise be. Mm-hmm. It's not like you can't be attacked. It's if they have some critical, huge Voltron thing, or they want to smack you for 10, it's trivial. They can just say, what do I feel like doing this turn? I could easily pay for this. It's not even hard. It's just 2 mana.
In order for a card to be good that gives your opponent the choice, we can look at things like Rhystic Study and Smothering Tide. The reason that these are good is because both of the choices are good for you.
Well, and also because both choices happen every single turn all the time, no matter what, and some decks don't even care about attacking. They
That's
just
also
go,
a great point.
I'm either going to attack you for infinite or nothing, or they go, I'm just trying to Aristocrat, drain you out, artifact combo like anything else, and it's just not every deck even wants to attack you.
Yeah, I think that's actually a very, very solid point, and I think we can move on from that to number 6. It's Diabolic Tutor. 4-mana tutors are unplayable. This isn't even remotely close to a card you want to touch at all if you're not on a budget.
So this one is, I don't think anyone's running around saying Diabolic Tutor is amazing, but I think people do leave it in their decks because tutors inherently are so strong. I just think this one's a little bit of a trap. I'd rather have some card draw or some extra synergy than this specific tutor. It's not make or break that you have a tutor in your deck. I think if you're on a budget or whatever, I still think you can go better and just play an extra card that's, throw in a Painful Truth or something that's going to just draw you cards. Don't worry about Diabolic Tutor, right? It's just not, it's too slow to make up for the fact that it's one of the best card types. This one isn't.
If you want to look overall, and you can see it, there 4 mana is the cutoff. This is absolutely the line. Nobody is playing tutors at 4 mana. They're not played very much other than for budget. Obviously, budget is that's a different beast. We're not talking about that today. Nobody's playing 4-mana tutors, and for a good reason. We don't want to stretch this far. And this is a card, and the reason we're talking about it is because this will be in one of your first CDH decks for a lot of people. You're going to build your first one. You're going to go, well, I see there's tutors here, so I'll put tutors in mine. You just want to get rid of the 4-mana tutors. It's 3-mana tutors I'm not even a big fan of. I think that they're overrated and bleh. But 4-mana tutors are unplayable.
Right, we can make the jump and say 3-mana tutors are fine. They're less exciting than people sometimes make them out to be. But I think 4-mana tutors, just cut them out of your deck and your deck will be better for it. Next is another removal spell. I wanted to distinctify this one from the other ones because it's Decimate. It targets 4 things, but it has to be exactly 4 things, and that's where your problem is. Creature and land, guaranteed. Artifact, yeah, probably, maybe. And enchantment, it's like, I don't know. And the fact that it's just like this wild card where it just might not work and it might not be castable. You can't choose not to target an enchantment. It has to.
This card is great if it's not a mandatory on all, but it is a mandatory on all. And that immediately takes this card from being good to being just not good at all. I don't want cards in my deck where I think that they can be uncastable. And this very clearly can be uncastable.
This might be more of a stance that we take where, we'll take a look at cards in general. How do we evaluate stuff? Well, it's like, if this card could be dead, I'm not interested. I don't think the upside is worth the massive potential downside for you. Cool threat. Well, go ahead.
Like, take a look at this card. So there has to be a creature, artifact, enchantment, and a land in play in order for it to be active. Now, let's look at our other removal spells we're playing. It's like when they hit creatures, okay, there has to be a creature in play. That's almost always. There has to be an artifact or an enchantment in play for something like my Healide's Intervention. That's almost always.
Or Force of Vigor. It's like, well, just 2. There's going to be 2 in play.
Yeah, exactly. It's not worth it. And maybe this is a card that I could easily see performing well for you. I'm never going to touch it, and I'm never going to regret it. I understand that there's the 4-for-1 potential here. But what if you're the only one who controls an enchantment? You're going to blow up your own enchantment? That'd be bad.
Yeah, then it starts to be like a 3-for-2, and I'm already off of it. The next one is Victimize. Victimize is such a weird card because it's very good. It's clearly like on there I can see the card is good, does everything a lot of decks want, and yet it just never, ever, ever makes one of my decks. And I always, always end up cutting it to go critical mass on creatures because there's a reanimation effect on a creature, because I'm lowering my curve, because it's a little bit of a setup. I just never play this card. It's so weird.
Well, I don't think it's that weird. I think it's just, like you said, the options are much better. If you're in the spell slot, you start with Reanimate. You have the enchantment, Animate Dead. There's other ones that are in that cheap range.
Persist Now.
Persist Now is a decent card. And then you go to the end of like, okay, I want more creatures that do it. We have our Karmic Guides. We have our Phyrexian Delvers. All these cards exist. And Victimize just gets left in the dust. And this is a card that you'll put in your deck and you'll be like, oh man, it was so good for me that one time. But you can be so much more efficient than this card. You can build your deck with many more creatures to make it stronger, or you can use the cheaper spells that are going to have the same effect, essentially.
Yeah, we have another card on here like this, and it's very similar to our Explosive Veggies slot in the last one. Explosive Veggies, the floor is pretty high. It's not like the worst card in the world, but I would still recommend just never play it. You don't have to go there.
Up next, we have In Garruk's Wake. It's a Plague Wind effect, but it's Planeswalkers this time, so that makes it good, right, BZ?
Well, that doesn't even make it good. This card stinks.
This card's not good at all. It's just way too much mana for the effect. The card that is playable version of this card is Ruinous Ultimatum. Ooh. Taking it down 2 more mana and adding the fact that it hits all non-land permanents makes this card very good. This card is out of range of what I want out of my 9-mana spells. It's just not good enough.
I mean, 9-mana spells, I don't even want 9-mana spells, let alone this 9-mana spell. Like, wait. The competition is almost nothing because the slot is so hard to fill. I mean, you look at 9-mana spells, what comes to my head? Expropriate?
There's Expropriate.
Emrakul the Promised End? Like what?
Tooth and Nail.
Tooth and Nail kicked.
Rise of the Dark Realms. Game-winning effects. Now, Rise of the Dark Realms is still on the lower end of like the 9-mana spells. It's still pretty strong, though. It'll get the job done. In Garruk's Wake isn't close to the power of any of those spells. 9 mana is a very powerful slot, and you better be doing something crazy there.
Yeah, because this is the card that gums up your opening hands and makes it harder to keep hands and makes it harder to get started. It's not like the payment is so much higher than just 9 mana. It's if this is in your opening hand, it is literally just a blank piece of cardboard. You better just work around it. Set it aside for 6 turns. Would I shave 5 mana off this spell to be able to hit all creatures? Yeah. Would I shave 6 mana off this spell to be able to hit all creatures that aren't mine if mine is the biggest creature, like with Toxic Deluge, where you get to scale it?
Yeah, this is not where you want to be for a board wipe. This is not where you want to be for 9 mana. Like BZ said, all the 9 mana spells, they gum up your opening hands and they don't do anything early. So you need to be able to make up for that by the spell being absolutely game winning, which is made up by the Expropriates, the Rise of the Dark Realms, and the Tooth and Nail Entwined. Those make up for it because they're just going to take the game.
It's over.
It's over. In Garruk's Wake, unless you have lethal on every opponent on board, it's not into the game. Sure, it's going to turn in your favor, but not good enough.
No, it's just not going to be worth it. I mean, we look at other, even like one-sided wipes. Like I said, Toxic Deluge can be one-sided. Tragic Arrogance always favors you, and Cyclonic Rift is just for 7.
Exactly. Next, we have Aetherize and Aether Spout. These are bouncing attackers. Sorry, no. I don't think these are even remotely close to the spectrum of playable, in my opinion.
It's a heavy investment. The fact that they're instants, I mean, that's what it needs to be, but 4 and 5 mana for an instant to hold up is already asking a ton. What I want if I'm holding up 4 and 5 mana instants is high power. Like we're talking Fact of Fiction for card draw, or I like to hold up Mystic Confluence because it's never a card I'm not going to cast. Imagine holding up 5 mana for Aether Spouts and they attack you with like 2 creatures. It's not even that big of a deal. It just feels so terrible. It's just you're not getting what you want with Aether Spouts. It's just they can go wherever the opponent wants. It's giving them a choice in addition to costing an extra mana. I think it's worse than Aetherize. And Aetherize, they go back to their hand. It's their turn. They can just deploy them post-combat if they want to.
Exactly. That is like a perfect way to put this. This card just is not worth it. It's not a good enough board wipe. I know what I think would be an interesting design for a commander version of these cards.
What?
Ether Bouts. Ether Bouts.
What does it do?
Well, it bounces attackers and blockers. Now you have an interesting card. Now you have a card where somebody makes an attack on a bunch of people block, and now you bounce the attackers and blockers.
Could do like an evacuation impression, but God, I forgot about evacuation for a second. Ugh. Comparing Aether Spouts to evacuation. Just bounce them all. You're blue. You're okay.
Yeah, exactly. Or just bounce them or do Cyclonic Rift. That's pretty good.
Yeah, it's tough to, like, we talk about budget. I mean, there you go. Devastation Tide. I just said it. Evacuation. And then there's even, if you're heavy blue, Engulf the Shore. It's just put these cards to shame. Shame.
Next, we have Sheoldred Whispering One. This card looks so good on paper.
It's so cool.
It looks so good. But it falls victim to the trap of I have to untap with it in order for it really to have done anything. And is 7 mana my opponent each sack a creature and I reanimate a creature good? No. The answer is no. That's just not that great of a card.
This is a classic example of you're paying for the stats. I don't want to pay for the stats. I don't want a 6/6 with Swamp Walk. Make this cost, subtract a bunch of mana from this, and you just get like Plague Crafter. And it's just, there's the instant speed Sheoldred effect for all 3 opponents, but you have to wait 0 seconds for it, and they can't react knowing it's in play. And, if you have a reanimate, there's your 1 reanimate off Sheoldred. It's 1 mana, and you get it right now.
Ooh, how about a cool cycle like this? I just come up with cool ideas for cards, where after the Phyrexians die, they have like the essence of them, and they're enchantments that do this.
Will they make an emblem?
Like, not necessarily an emblem, but like it's the essence of Sheoldred. It does exactly what Sheoldred did.
Jeez. Well, that reminds me of like if Yawgmoth died, his emblem would be like all lands are swamps.
Yeah, that's really cool. Next, we have Gilded Lotus. This one is a little bit tougher because there might be some decks out there that want this. In general, it is definitely a card to avoid. The ramp, 5 mana is not where you want to be ramping overall, and that's the main issue with this card.
We have a lot of gripes with other cards like this where, Mirari's Wake and Zendikar Resurgence, like you want to set up at that point, or mana doublers. Mm-hmm. Gilded Lotus is probably the one I disagree with you most on this list. It's probably the only one where we're like far enough apart that I think that this is just bad, not unplayable. Some decks need specific 3 rocks that tap for exactly 3 or, more than 2 or something.
Okay.
I think this is a niche role player, but overall, I don't think I'm going to hurt you. I think it's going to help you by saying just avoid this. Don't play it.
I agree. I just think if you're hitting the point of getting into talking about higher power level games, you shouldn't be seeing many Gilded Lotus, and you shouldn't be putting it in your deck. It just doesn't provide quite enough. The card is you only need to untap once with it for it to have paid its mana back, but you do have to have untap with it. It basically costs 2 on your first turn. It's not super bad. It's just not quite good enough, in my opinion.
Yeah, 2 taps puts you up a mana, but when you play rocks earlier, even 3 mana rocks, you're up a mana right at the same time. And then, you have to untap again, and you're up 4 mana. It's cool. It will be good, and it's like the explosive veggies where the floor is high. You're going to make a bunch of mana with this. It could just be better. It's low enough on the totem pole. Don't really have to go to it. I mean, Thran Dynamo is even better.
It's not dice to removal that is the argument here that I would use, but rather that people are going to be able to efficiently answer this very easily. When you spend all this big mana investing in this, now they know how much you've invested in it. They just saw it. They know the value they get just from playing their 1 mana like Nature's Claim to remove it. That's the problem with all these big setup spells, is that everyone knows you're spending all that mana to set up. Well, what if we don't let him set up? Oh, then we would gain a huge mana advantage and a big advantage in the game. Yeah, seems like the right thing to do.
It's like a lightning rod where even if you get to untap with it, you're like, all right, that was okay. I avoided Gilded Lotus in general. If I had to rank all these cards, maybe this is the best one of these 20.
Oh, boy.
But, I still think it's below the playable bar. Next is Maelstrom Nexus. This is just like one of those 5-color trap cards. It's really cool. It's really splashy. It's really big. I think you can have a 5-color deck and go like, I love this card. I want to put it in. Obviously, thinking card is awesome, and, you love it for the art or the home run flavor or whatever else. That's just one of the core things that makes EDH so great, and I promote that 100%. But when we're talking about upgrading power, I think this has almost none.
I think this card is very, very bad.
It does do nothing the turn you cast it, always.
Always. I mean, this is just not even remotely close to a playable spell in my book. And I understand there's a fun factor to it. And I'm obviously not taking that into consideration because I'm talking about power here.
Yeah, we're just evaluating how playable these cards are.
And this card, I think, is just actually unplayable. It is so bad. It's only the first spell you cast each turn. It's not all your spells have Cascade, because now we're talking about maybe something that's interesting. No, it's the first spell you cast each turn. So if you're not casting a ton of instants, this isn't even very good. Plus, it's 5 mana setup, and it's Wooburg setup.
Yeah, we have other things, even for Cascade Tribal, that you want to do fun Cascade stuff. You don't even have to go to this. Next is a card that I love still. Always will be near dear to my heart, but Village Rites is just never going to make a commander deck. And if I had to pick, this might be actually the most contentious one, because the floor is super high. It just cycles your creature. You trade a token or a stupid Bloodghast or something for 2 cards. But it kind of ends up being like a Tormenting Voice, where you just end up spinning your wheels and cycling cards, and it ends up hurting you because it's not a creature that could do something very similar, and your deck loses that critical mass feel. You lose the number of your undergrowth count. You lose casting a creature from your graveyard because it's not there because it's Village Rites.
Yeah, the main thing about this is you have to make sure you're not sacrificing worth any value to start, which shouldn't be the most challenging part, but it definitely is a challenge. You have to set up the board, and now you can cast Village Rite to get the value. You still have to sacrifice something. You have to get it off the board. There's just better draw spells. It feels like you never have to stoop to this card.
It's not like a Night's Whisper where you just go, boop, fire it off and get your things back. There is some setup to it. You're right. You have to get creatures out that don't matter so that you can cast this to then draw 2. It's like, turn 4 or 5 plus at least. You're just better off with a creature. You want to sacrifice creatures, I can guarantee you're in a high-density creature deck. Just play a creature. It has a dice trigger. It has an ETB trigger. It's when you cut Village Rites for a creature, you improve every other creature in your deck. The card that you added might be worse than Village Rites on hand or at parity, but then you look at, now my Midnight Reaper has an extra creature to draw a card off. Now my Liliana Dreadhorde General sees this. Now my Fleshback Marauder can sacrifice this instead of my next best creature.
Exactly. And for all those reasons, I'm out.
For those reasons, we're out.
Next, the Diamond Cycle. Any diamond. There's Marble Sky, Charcoal, Fire, Moss.
Mox Diamond is unplayable? You idiot.
The Diamond Cycle is just, they're 2 mana rocks, they enter tapped, and they produce 1 color. If these came in untapped, I'd be thumbs up.
I'm telling you, they're coming. They're going to make those. They're going to need to sell some Commander products, and then that's going to, maybe even like D&D Commander Legends.
Yeah, that was just announced actually yesterday, which is really cool. We can talk about that at the end. That'll be our tidbit. But, honestly, the diamonds, they're just not good enough in our opinions. We don't want tapped mana rocks. There's so many untapped mana rocks.
And the green one is extra bad, because we don't even want green mana rocks at all. So you have Signets and Talismans and Thought Vessel and Arcane Signet, and it's just you're going to have 5 or 6 easy before you have to go to these 5 or 6 untapped ones, if you need them.
Yeah, and then there's some better tapped ones that you can even be working with in multicolored, like you have like the Cold Steel Heart, which is going to be better in any 2-color or more deck.
Right, because it fixes.
Yeah, and there's the Star Compass also.
Right. Next, this is a little bit of a trap, and this card represents a bunch of different cards. This is Dwynnen Guiltleaf Daein. I looked, and this was in like 60% of something elf decks. Maybe the category's off. but it's in thousands of decks at least. And that was enough for me to go, hold on, what's going on here? The problem with Dwynnin and many, many other tribal lords is they say all elves get, and then people get, stoked about it, and they put them in their deck. Elves get +1/+1, and then the flavor text that's on this card is terrible. It's meaningless. It's never going to give you enough of a boost to be what your deck wants. It's not going to help push through that many attacks. It's not going to change the clock in a meaningful way. This isn't worth 4 mana. You can't stack your deck full of these because all of a sudden you got 7 cards, all of which don't really do anything, and your tribe gets hurt.
Yeah, exactly. These pumping should be a bonus of the card. If the card has good effects, and then on top of that it pumps, such as
Goblin Trashmaster.
What's the 3 mana taps for elves?
Elvish Archdruid. Goblin Trashmaster. They bump your elves, but that's not why we play them. They're Priests of Titania. They're Shatter on a Stick on all my goblins. Like, that's huge, and we'll take the bonus. It's not, we don't play them because they're lords. We play them because they're amazing tribal payoffs with upside.
Yeah, you would not. I would never play the Goblin King. It gives Mountain Walk. I would never play Master of the Pearl Trident. Is that what it is?
The one that gives Merfolk the
Island Walk?
Maybe.
I'm just not playing these. These aren't quite good enough in my book, personally, because I need the most to be good. I want my goblins get +1/+1 in haste. Haste, you say? We're talking.
Or cost 1 less. I don't even need the +1/+1 on the Goblin Lord that does that. One of the funny exceptions that card just went up because of Yavimaya is Elvish Champion, which gives you guys Forest Walk. Maybe. I could see that, where you're like tricking them and now your guys are unblockable, which is... But then again, we're not playing it for the +1/+1. We're playing it for the unblockable.
Exactly.
And so it wouldn't be the Lord. So just maybe if you're in the tribal niche, go check out your Lords. And if one of them isn't providing a card you'd play without the +1/+1, maybe just cut it.
Agreed. Next, Assemble the Legion. This card is way too slow, and it is in a high percentage of Boros decks.
It's cool. And then you can get to say mustard counters, which I have it in a deck because I was like, I need to try this card out. It's been really underwhelming. It's really slow to get going. You need 3 upkeeps before you're like, all right, 3 dudes for free, let's go. You paid 5 mana, and then you waited 3 turns. And now you're like, okay, 3 tokens for free. That's all right. Yep. And then you just have to keep going and going and going. And eventually it can overwhelm people. It's not going to last that long. The game's not going to last that long.
Overall, I don't want these upkeep triggers, get a tokens. I've fallen off with them in EDH. Bitter Blossom, probably the best one because it's only 2 mana.
And it's an enchantment.
And it is very tribal if that matters to you in any way. But overall, I'm just not touching these things. Outlaw's Merriment falls into the same category where it's just not enough. You're not getting enough, and it's too slow to get to the point where it's like, this was worth it.
Yeah, this is distinct from things like Ophiomancer, which have a virtual immediate effect. Repeatable tokens that you're going to get 4 per turn if you have a sack outlet. You can really take advantage of things like Ophiomancer, different from like your Bitter Blossoms and your Assembles. I'll put Assemble on Unplayable. I don't know if I think Bitter Blossom is just, in my opinion, bad, not unplayable.
Yeah. Well, I think that Outlaw's Merriment is unplayable with...
Sure. I meant
with this.
Those 2 specifically.
Yeah. Next, we have Twincast, Reverberate, Fork effects. All of these. You've seen it a million times. I just don't think it's worth it to pay 2 mana to copy a spell. Sometimes there might, again, this is one of those where it feels like there's those corner case decks. They exist. But if I'm upgrading my deck, I think you could safely just get these out.
Yeah, I don't like calling these red ramp. I don't think forking a Cultivate is really blowing the roof off of anything. That's a lot of things that had to go right for you, and you're on turn 2 or 3,
and you had to hold up the 2 mana. So if you're on turn 3, you've held up the 2 mana. What if that doesn't get cast?
What if you didn't play something else?
You don't want to waste 2 mana. You never want to be wasting mana in EDH. That is very inefficient way to play the game.
How could you ever determine if Cultivate's going to be cast? What if they cast Skyshroud Claim? What if they cast Nature's Law? You can't go get Forests.
Yeah, you can't fork those. It doesn't work at all. So Fork, Reverberate, and Twincast, they just fall into this category of cards that don't quite do enough. But the funny thing about cards like this is they're one where sometimes they can win you the game.
They can go infinite.
And they can go infinite. They can do certain things good. It's only corner cases. It's only specific decks. And if you're trying to power up, just cut them.
Right. In general, just cut them. These next cards get the SpongeBob award of, oh, brother, this guy stinks! Because they're just cards we're never going to touch with a 20,000-foot pole.
They're not even close. They're player's position and aestheticism. They're giving your creatures hexproof, essentially. No. You don't protecting your team from spot removal for a slot, for a whole card, absolutely 110% not worth it.
Well, maybe there's cards that make it worth it, but it's not 5 mana worth it. These are like undoubtedly, don't touch these, please. They're not going to get you the value that they look like they might get you. Shroud on your dudes, not good enough. There's more expensive cards that'll do the same thing, but that's why we pay more for them, because they're just 10 times better. Like, look at Greater Oromancy or even Sterling Grove, which is like 0 cents. If you're going the privileged position route and you want hexproof on all your things, there's so much better ways to get it. 5 mana, like, when are you playing this? You got to play this and then your threats? Because if you play your threats and then this, they're not protected until you play it. Then if you play this first, you're waiting like 1,000 years.
In aestheticism, how often are you ever going to be able to hold up 2 mana to regenerate your creature? Also, how often does regeneration save you? Because sometimes it just doesn't. What if they cast Damnation? What if they cast Wrath of God? What if they cast Toxic Deluge?
Tragic Arrogance, Cyclonic Rift, all the best cards in the format.
Yeah, it doesn't protect you from any of those. These cards are these ones are some of the worst ones for me. I just don't think that you ever want to touch these, honestly.
I think these will hurt you more than if you're like an enchantment deck, let's say, these will hurt you more than just playing Moss Diamond. Like, you could replace them with Moss Diamond and notice a reasonable improvement.
Dang, that's sad.
I'm just saying, I stay as far away from these as possible if you think that you trust our opinion on stuff.
Yep. What's the last one?
The last one is Temple of the False God. I can't imagine this is too contentious at this point. This is like a classic old guard EDH card where they made it and you're like, oh, that's pretty sweet. It's like, make 5 mana, and if your meta's slower, maybe it never punished you. It's not Ancient Tomb. It really isn't.
As soon as you play this card and you get punished by it, you realize how bad it is.
Right. I'm over this. I'm never going near it again. I've tried it so many times. I've gotten screwed by it so many times. I've gone, oh wow, this is in my hand. I have to work around it, and I didn't necessarily get screwed, but I lost percentage points because it was in my hand, or I had to work around it, or just not interested.
If you've ever put it out as your first, second, third, or fourth land drop, it's probably never your first. You didn't make that bad of this.
God help you at that point.
Yeah. If you've ever put it out as your probably third or fourth land drop, you know the feeling. You know how bad this card makes you feel when it just should be any other land. A basic land is going to perform better than this every time in the 2 and 4 slot if you don't have the lands. I mean, obviously the card is going to look great when it's good. When it's good, it's great. But when it's bad, it's a blank piece of cardboard.
Yes. One of the things about the 2 mana lands, too, is their impact is like exponentially higher the earlier you play them. That's why Ancient Tomb is so stupid. If you start the game Ancient Tomb Signet, you're miles ahead. But when you draw Ancient Tomb on turn 8, you barely notice. It's just, all right, I have an extra mana. That was nice. Nice to have. It's better than a forest. But it's not like going to crack anything open. But on turn 1, 2, and 3, you're like, okay, I'm going to have access to 8 extra mana this whole game. And it's huge, but it's just so much less when you can't do anything until turn 5.
Exactly.
Like, all right, here you go. I got an extra mana.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. But that's the end of the video. Special shout outs to all of our patrons. Love you guys all as much as we can without making you uncomfortable. Obviously, we would never want to make you uncomfortable.
Yes, I think maybe we adjusted the tone a little bit for this video. We were in a very jokey mood that day, and maybe we should have adjusted a little bit more serious with some people would consider it a sensitive topic to tell some people their pet cards are bad. If it's your pet card, more power to you. Pet cards are awesome. Just play whatever you want. But if you're looking for advice, here it is.
Yeah, we play bad cards all the time. Do I play any of these cards?
I play Village Rites in my favorite card tribal deck.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, you do.
I told them I'd play Assemble the Legion because I was testing it out. I'm going to cut it, but I was testing it.
I put Grave Titan. Grave Titan's a card I'd put in the deck to power it down.
Yeah, I think I've had Gilded Lotus, but not anything recently. That might be it, actually.
Yeah, not much. I've not played many of these not that I haven't played many cards. I don't put these cards in my deck because I don't think they're good.
Right. You can check out the TCG player link in the description for a nice way to support the channel without spending any extra money. You click, navigate, put cards in your cart, check out, and then we get free money courtesy of TCG player. Not you. That's amazing. You get to support us and give us basically a tip jar.
You literally spend the same amount of money you're going to spend. It's no additional cost to you.
Goose egg.
Goose egg. You're literally just helping out the channel, and we appreciate that a poop load.
Right. And if you want to see Commander gameplay, guess what? It's happening. But if you want to see it spiced up even more, you can go support our Kickstarter, which is already funded, baby. So you know that the money you send in is going to improving it, getting it better, more quality, more episodes, more content, more goals that are going to be super spicy that we're not revealing yet. But the first one is the anti-nitpicking nerds deck. Basically, all 20 of these freaking cards, plus all 20 of the last cards in a deck that's going to play against us.
Yep, running through September 21st. Running through September 21st, so make sure you get in and support us if you want to, ASAP as possible.
Yes. We were going to do the other tidbit, but I wanted to talk about, at least first, we did Mystery Booster draft the other day. Holy crap, I drafted the best deck I've ever drafted in my entire career. Magic, any format, this is the best deck I've drafted. Not close. It was real silly. It was green-white, and it had 8 rares in it. I had Amazing Rule, I had Path to Exile, I had Faith's Fetters, I had other stuff. And then my rares were like All Is Dust, Eldrazi Monument, Mana Crypt, Trading Post.
Why are you wasting the tidbit?
A Crow and Horse. It's amazing. It was such a sweet deck.
Yeah, but you could have used this. You could have told them that anytime. Then people want to know our opinion on all the new stuff that was.
No, I was super excited about it. That's my tidbit. You can do whatever you want.
Well, yeah. You should have done that tidbit a different day.
We're going to Mafiaville, and we're going back to Dominaria 2 more times.
We're going for the Brothers' War in the past, and we're going for Return to Dominaria, whatever it's called. I don't remember what it's called. United. Dominaria United.
Yep.
And we're going to, and I know this one was pretty much already spoiled.
Kamigawa.
We're going to Kamigawa Cyberpunk. It actually looks very cool. I am legitimately very excited for it. For the first, like, the rest of the sets are like, Dominaria again. Nothing wrong with Dominaria. Not excited about it. What was the other one? The city kind of looks cool, and I'm interested to see what they do with it. But Kamigawa Cyberpunk style looks very cool, and that is honestly the set I'm excited for next most year.
You know what's funny?
You're excited for Fortnite, right?
No, I don't care. You know what? Please, honestly, this will be a really long tidbit, but do your part and refrain from making the low-hanging fruit, mindless Fortnite meme jokes. Please, I'm going to be bombarded with so many of those. I just would love it because I know so many people are going to feel this too. Please. I get it. I get that it's funny meme, like Fortnite, haha, that's stupid. I think it's dumb. But maybe some people are going to like it. And just everyone's saying it. You do not need to also say it.
Why does it even need to be made fun of? It made me roll my eyes when I saw it, but it doesn't need to be insulted. It doesn't need to be made fun of. And I had somebody say to me, this is a sign of things to come. Of what?
We already did this. We've already said
the sign of things to come was The Walking Dead.
Right. We said
that was the sign of things to come.
Stranger Things was announced before this. We already knew that. I don't have a problem with it.
This is fine. There's nothing wrong with any of these things. You don't have to like them. You don't have to enjoy them. But let people enjoy what they enjoy.
Yes, and just don't bombard people with this. Oh my God, I'm so ready for it.
There's a Magic the Gathering.
There's some subreddits. What is the worst one? Free Magic? That's probably going to be all over there.
That wasn't what I was talking about at all.
What?
You got off. You went on to
communities. Yeah.
You went into a different thought of what I was going to say. There's somebody out there who loves Magic the Gathering, plays Magic the Gathering all the time, and loves Fortnite and plays all the time because it's one of the most popular games literally in the world. That is just like, this is so cool. It's combining my two hobbies. Let that person enjoy it and stop being a baby.
Go check out our fallacy video if you're yelling at people.
Yeah.
But I wanted to say what the other thing was before you switch to the 8th tidbit. Wizards, I gotta hand it to them. Genius move. Some people were like, Kamigawa sucks. I never want to go there. And some people were like really complaining. We have to go back there. I'm gonna be irritated if you don't. They fixed both because they went back there. But guess what? It's literally they're not in Kamigawa. They just made up a new plane and said 2,000 years have passed. Here it is, and that was genius. It's just a different plane.
Well, we're still getting ninjutsu, and that pumps me up.
It's just a different. It's so funny. It's just a different plane. And they got everybody.
Yeah, hype for
everybody. No, it's cool. I'm like, this looks sweet, but I'm one of the people who never wanted to go back. And it's like, we just didn't go back.
Cyberpunk.
It's great.
So I'll end the video on this. Cyberpunk Ninja with an origami raccoon. Peace out, Tribe Scout.